Biggest ever football event to be held on these shores. Kale go for the spectacular. What about that? What about that?
55 years after they first dared to dream of being part of the giant continent to the north, Australia, champions of Asia.
Good technique. You're nice and rested.
You know, we've had a series of games where there's been some pretty clear objectives, particularly in terms of broadening the pool and seeing whether we could get some better balance in the squad and some more depth.
On the back of the World Cup, obviously the focus turned to the Asian Cup.
It was really a kind of a transitional period. You obviously lost a lot of players in that kind of the older generation had gone.
Been a tricky 12 months with just one victory in the last calendar year.
On the left foot. Whoa! And that's two. Nothing Matt Ryan could do about that one for the second time.
We just don't want to jag a win. We want to actually win, trying to play the kind of football we want, and that's our objective, and that's been our objective from the moment I took over. We haven't had success in that department in terms of results yet, and that's what we need to try and get to.
We're just going to stick to our plan that the boss puts out, and we're going to move forward.
And Khalfan Ibrahim scores for Qatar. Disaster for the Socceroos.
When it sparks and when it happens, it's brilliant. But if there's a spark without a finish, then in the Asia Cup, it shows that the teams from the Middle East and Asia will punish it.
Unmarked to put Japan a goal in front. Australia went to sleep at the back post.
How much improvement is needed before January on that?
Personally, I think a big improvement. We haven't got long to go.
And Australia just had no answer.
It's poor defending by Australia.
Angst and anger. Ange has been under the pump somewhat this week. The big question, however, remains, are Australia ready?
I've been a little bit frustrated with our constant sort of painting a picture of a team that's not good enough, of a league that's not good enough, of players that aren't good enough. Are our young guys good enough? And that's never what our national team's been about. In the end, in the wash-up, I'm pretty pleased with the 23 we've ended up with. Playing at home in front of our own supporters in conditions that they're familiar with and they like, playing in front of family and friends, it'll give them an enormous boost. I'm certainly hoping that's one of our strengths going into this tournament.
Happy New Year. What?
If you know Ange, he obviously, he's a bit of a mastermind in terms of the way he does things.
He would paint the pictures and connect all the dots. The idea of winning the Asian Cup, I'm sure it would have been in his mind when he took over the job.
He just had a perfect way of bringing a team together.
He said, what we're going to do is we're going to stand up in front of everyone and we're going to tell our story, our individual stories about how we got to be here today.
This was before any game had started. It's kind of intimidating because you're kind of revealing about, what it meant, and there was a lot of players, showing tears and things like that.
Whether you're Mark Bresciano or you're Matt Ryan, or it doesn't matter what generation you come from, if you're an Australian footballer, there's a certain journey you've taken to get to where you are.
I probably didn't fully appreciate what it meant until Ange came in. I don't think anyone stressed the importance of actually putting on that jersey for your country just quite like he did.
Seeing some of the boys express what it meant to them made the whole team kind of come together.
Australia expects this team to not only open proceedings, but close them in 23 days' time.
On home soil, playing at Amy Park for the first game was packed.
Will the year of experimentation pay dividends? Moment of truth for Australia on and off the park.
I didn't expect to play as much. I think we had the first game against Kuwait. Marco Bresciano's on the bench.
Perhaps the surprise selection, Massimo Luongo, or not?
But we got Kuwait in the first game. It's a long tournament. In my head, I'm thinking I'm only in just to sort of give Mark a little rest and use him in the later parts in the more important game.
I don't think I'd met Musk before that tournament, so I had no idea who he was, because I think he was playing in League One at the time, I think.
He went overseas at a young age and he pretty much fell off at least my radar, in terms of what was going on with him.
I remember we went into one of these camps and he came and he was fat. Baby fat, he was pudgy, but I found out later he was injured, so he couldn't move. And then we didn't see him until, Yeah, basically the national team. I remember saying to him, I said, "Man, you lost a little bit of your baby fat."
When I saw him in the team, I was obviously kind of surprised.
I even started pretty bad.
Not the surest of first touches from Mas Luongo. He's committed another foul. That's two. He's going to have to be careful.
I couldn't find my feet. I think every ball I touched was went out of play, or I gave a foul away.
And Australia caught napping there.
A dangerous moment. Mas Luongo clocked off.
That chance. They have a corner, whipped and low. Aziz Mishan! There's the opening goal from Hussein Fadel!
And they scored, and then as soon as they scored, it was like an awakening for everyone in the team.
Goodness me, this was not in the script. But trailing in the biggest tournament ever hosted on these shores.
What was sort of going through the head at that stage?
Shit. I remember the day before the game, I hit a long ball, a big diagonal ball, and the gaffer lost his head at me and said, "I don't want that, I don't want that." I remember I got the ball in the game, I hit this big diag. As soon as I hit it, I remember looking around, giving a half eye to the bench, and I remember Ange was just like, put his head down, I was like, "Oh shit, all right." And then they went and scored.
It was probably a good little wake-up call, and it was like, okay, this isn't going to come easy, it doesn't matter who we're playing.
I thought to myself, so this is international football at its finest. Pressure's on here.
Half an hour played, and Ange Postecoglou and his team have got a problem they didn't think they'd have at kickoff.
We need to wake up and really, put our foot on the gas kind of
I
thing.
think that goal was kind of what we needed as well. It kind of settled the nerves, goes, all right, now we know what we need to do. They're going to sit back now and try and protect, so we could just pop it around, and we responded very quickly.
He's back in position for the throw, and the one goes away from him though. There's the goal! Tim Cahill, him again!
I remember a thrown into the corner, and I managed to get a hold of it and cut it back for Timmy.
Huge relief for Mas Luongo, doing what he does best, attacking teams in and around the penalty area.
Back in the groove somewhat. Franic to check and deliver. Great ball in, and what a header!
Probably the debut game that he could have dreamed of. He played unbelievable in that game.
It was one of those ones where he just caught fire, and I think, again, Ange instilling that sort of, if in doubt, go forward, that helps, because he can turn, and then he's always going to have runners who are just going to make the effort for him.
Sets up goal number one, and then Mas Luongo between the Kuwaiti defenders, and heads beautifully.
Yeah, everything was gone. All the nerves or the feelers, they were gone, and we just went up.
The skipper leads the way, and they're singing in the rain in Melbourne. Leading them a merry dance before eventually firing it in. Oh, there it is! James Troisi! It's a result that sets the tone, relieves some of the pressure.
4-1 was a good start to the tournament, and for me to get my goal and then rest, recover, and move on to the next one. Although it's on home soil, which is, it's your 12th man, there's still a lot of pressure installed in that.
The one on home soil probably magnified the whole, the tournament. It was a bumper crowd, and we had those before with the national team, but it got really big in that Asian Cup.
Socceroos step two, even if Oman are hardly world beaters, they have been a thorn in the side of Australian teams in the past. Now Kuwait scored early from a corner, and Australia learned their lesson.
And I remember the second game we played Oman in Sydney.
Nice and Al-Khaldi to deliver. It wasn't a bad one either. And it comes to Ryan Ibrahim. Oh, what a save from Matt Ryan.
There was a volley from the edge of the box early on to my left where I got my top hand to it, and that was another moment where I felt like I was building confidence. And it was the moment for me where I felt like, okay, I've got a real opportunity now. I know that I've got to prove it every week, but I felt like I belonged there. It was probably the first moment that I proved it to myself.
I think it all clicked and it was all right at the moment. We had a lot of guys who were, experiencing Europe for the first time, a couple of years been in Europe, and then we had a lot of guys who have been in the Premier League, experienced players. I think it was just basically go out there. I believe in you from the gaffer. I believe in you. I know what you can do. That's why you're here. That's why you're representing your country.
In towards the far post, Sainsbury on Matt
Mackay stealing my thunder. I think we were sort of starting to roll on again, taking the confidence from the first game. We were bit more assured of ourselves at that stage.
Here's Luongo's been instrumental in that lovely ball. After all his injury problems, he's back in the groove for his country.
I just come off my ACL, so this was my kind of first tournament back, and this was kind of the pressure reliever for me. That year I kind of had of injury, kind of felt like I got into the tournament at that mode. Kind of helped, break the shackles and got more into the rhythm. Actually a really good goal. We had kind of worked, Ange a lot of the time emphasised on forward runs, and that was a major part of my game.
Now Luongo, now Cruz, and now the Socceroos are back on the front foot again. Deep cross, this should be 3.
He has given a penalty. Pardon me. Well, they're fair enough too.
And Australia will go into the sheds. 3 goals to the good. Quite a sure touch from Lecky, but he's picked up the scraps, and his pace will take him away from the defender. He arcs it in. There's the 4th goal. Tommy Juric. Easy as you like.
I think there was always one eye on the next game, the big South Korea game in the 3rd game of the group. I think there was always one eye on that. So it was kind of get the job done and move on as quickly as possible.
And now it starts to get a little bit tougher with South Korea on Saturday.
Every ticket has been sold. It's going to be a crowd nudging 50,000 tonight.
Teams are through to the quarters. We're still top spot at stake. Both teams have won their 2 games, so I'm sure it'll be an exciting game.
Obviously Korea have always been one of our heavyweight battles in Asia, and obviously they had a lot of big time players at the time. They had Sonny at Leverkusen, and they had a few more boys in Germany at the time who were Ku and I think G as well, who were quite big stars. The Korean, they had a really big fan base here in Australia as well, so they brought a lot of fans with them.
What a noise to greet them here at the Brisbane Stadium. Millet Jedinak not on the substitutes bench tonight. Temperature just below 30 degrees.
Brisbane, super humid, really muggy. Could barely breathe properly, you were sweating so much. So it was a really, really tough condition.
Tee up Franjic and Juric, and he spoons it over the bar.
I remember peppering their goal, and their keeper had an absolute worldie. He saved after save after save after save.
Sung Young again, good option. Lee Kun Ho in behind, right across the face and in. South Korea in front, right where they need to be if they want to top this group.
Obviously we wanted to win because we wanted to avoid the path of playing Japan. We didn't really discuss that, but I'm sure it was in the back of, well, I know I did discuss it, so it was in the back of a few players' minds. And I had a really good chance at the end. I think we definitely should have got the draw, because I think we got the draw, we were through the group on top.
South Korea win it. They get the 3 points they needed to top the group.
First time I sat out and watched, and I felt that pride, and that just seeing them do their stuff against Oman first, and even against Korea, even though we didn't get the result, but I just thought the performance was really good, and 1 lapse in concentration and we were punished, but I just thought we're in a good place here, and this is I can't wait to get back out there.
Millet are probably the best captain I've had in my football career. He's definitely the pick of the bunch. Just the way he can commands respect, but he is also understanding of the person and the player, that you go through those ups and downs.
It was one that was perhaps not a man of many words, but his words were very impactful.
We had those 4 or 5 kind of older guys who kind of kept the younger boys in check and kind of kept us all together, and even ride the highs and the lows.
Timmy, Millet, Bresh, with any successful team, you need that balance of experience and youth.
For me, it's just about having a chat with someone is always good enough sometimes, if that's all they need. Other times, some boys might need an arm around the shoulder, some consoling, or need to be heard and things like that, which you're happy to do, and it's part and parcel of being in such a close-knit environment all the time, and we do lean on each other sometimes, and I'm happy to be a part of that.
The guys that seem to do that little bit more, sacrifice and dedicate themselves that little bit more to the craft of being a footballer, it was no coincidence to me that it was always those players that sort of then went on to have the bit better careers as well,
Well, the knockout phase is upon us at this AFC Asian Cup. All the big guns return Captain Miller Jedinak heads the list after his 2-game absence with an ankle problem. Bresciano, similar sort of delivery. Kale went for it, couldn't reach it. Back in by Franic. And Kale going for the spectacular. What about that? What about that? Oh, Timmy Kale. He's an absolute star.
Or he might have been 10 feet off the ground, but I remember him with one hand on the ground. But I mean, to be doing that at that age, pretty crazy.
That was the biggest thing I took from Timmy. You know, the night before a game, you know, look at the defenders that he was coming up against and seeing how they would pivot or turn. It doesn't happen by luck or coincidence, you know, that's him creating his own luck, and that's when preparation meets opportunity, and that was probably the biggest lesson I met from him, those types of things.
Solid challenge from Chengdong, and it comes Cahill! Timmy Cahill again! Australia surely heading for the semi-finals of the Asian Cup, just unstoppable!
You know, he might have been a boy from Australia that would have been up against it to go and, you know, take on the world, and from a football sense, whoever he was coming up against, no matter who they were, playing at whatever club or whatever level, he truly believed in himself that he could go out there and produce.
Australia are through to the last 4. Back on track. Ange Postecoglou's team march on to the semi-finals, where a potential meeting with holders Japan now looms.
Japan were the heavyweights at the time. They were really good. They were reigning champions as well, so they're always there or thereabouts, littered with stars.
Sitting around watching the game, obviously, because we played before them. They went to penalties.
He's hit the post! Disaster for Japan!
We were all UAE fans that day.
One kick, and they're in the last 4, and the holders are out.
There was a feeling that we all knew that they were going to go through, and it wasn't going to be Japan. It was just a feeling we had.
Ismail Ahmed puts his boot through it, and the UAE are in the last 4 of the Asian Cup.
At that point in the tournament, you're just obviously on recovery mode, so you're just preparing for that game. And we were surprised, you know, we were playing UAE, but it was emphasised to us how good UAE were at the time. They had, I think it was Abdul Rahman. You know, we were really aware of his talents because he had an excellent left foot and very, very good on the ball.
I remember making comments about him being lazy and stuff, but that was just all tactic to try and get him to defend further away and get as far away from our goal as possible.
I just remember it vividly with my family down there in Newcastle. You just couldn't wait for game time because you just wanted to make sure you did everything you could to get to that final, because you just knew how big it was for football in the country.
Well, perhaps the biggest football occasion the city of Newcastle has ever seen. One of the cradles of the game here in Australia. Tonight host the Socceroos as they take on the UAE for a place in the Asian Cup final.
The coach they had at the time brought that team through the youth system, so they pretty much stuck together all the way through. So there was actually a lot of hype about them.
The UAE have already knocked out the holders in Japan. Now for the hosts.
So we knew they were going to be quite cohesive and they knew each other's strengths, so they were always going to be a tough opponent to play.
That's to Jedinak, and the header is in from Trent Sainsbury. Oh, what a start for Australia. First goal for his country.
Trent's a very nonchalant and relaxed type of guy. He reads the game very well, and something in the water over there in Perth. It's that AFL gene, I think, a little bit. He can hang in the air for the headers and gets up there as well, you know.
Big Timmy, he always used to get a lot of attention from defenders. So I thought to myself, if I can just sort of trail him a little bit, maybe I'll get a bit of space, and it just seemed to work out that way pretty good. I never get tired of watching it, to be honest.
With Franic, who gets past Mohamed Abdulrahman with ease. And a chip in towards Kale, who went for it. Lecky! Good block by the UAE defence, dug out, and then Davidson will score! His first international goal as well!
At that stage then, we were just dreaming of the final in Sydney, sold out crowd. You know, everyone could feel the buzz.
It's Australia's day. Postecoglu and his team, who endured the year from hell last year, are in something approaching football heaven.
Going to the finals.
Yeah, there's some stuff we've been talking about from the first day we've been in camp about what it means to represent your country, and more specifically, what it means to be a Socceroo. And you know, the players have, I think, shown all those qualities in this last month, and I guess, you know, the final message will be to make sure that they stay true to those qualities that those before them have brought forward.
It's all about Australia South Korea in front of a packed house in Sydney.
Yeah, obviously the nerves were there. Obviously we knew how big of an occasion it was.
Goosebumps with the national anthem. I remember singing that and the whole stadium behind us.
I actually remember at that time going, man, I wonder what it's going to feel like, how heavy the trophy's going to be when I lift it above my head. Like I was just thinking about that the whole time.
Carpe diem, seize the day. Over the wall and just over the top of the goal, clips it towards Son Heung-min! And it flashes just wide. It's South Korea that's been on the front foot. Can Australia finish the half on top? Luongo! Oh my goodness! Massimo Luongo! First blood in the Asian Cup final to Australia!
I like the touch. That was a really good touch. And time to think. Turn. We weren't really in the game, but I just hit it, and it bobbled up just a little bit, so I can put my full lace through it, and yeah, it just flies in the bottom corner.
In terms of live, it's one of the best goals I've ever seen.
Frank just got that ball, and I remember there was two players either side of him, and it was such a tight corridor of area to work in, and Ange would be drilling into us all the time to turn there, just to turn all the time, and it's such a small space, and he just did a beautiful turn there, and it was just fitting the tournament that he had to do that, and then just to hit it so sweetly into the corner, and just seeing that whole crowd in yellow celebrating like was an unbelievable feeling.
Yeah, it was a good moment, wasn't it?
And look at the smile on the face of Ange Postecoglou. 1-0 now for the Tiger Warriors, who played like warriors tonight. But Australia have been so brave. They've lost 2 players to injury. They've had to repel raid after raid. And still they hold the most fragile of leads. Here's the chance. Son Heung-min inside the box. They've scored! Son Heung-min in stoppage time! Oh, what drama, what joy for South Korea! And what despair for Australia!
I don't know, in my mind I was still very calm. I just thought, oh, all right, bugger it, it's over. I'm just gonna have to win it in extra time now. There was no doubt in my mind we were gonna win the tournament. It was just a formality sort of thing that we had to go through to end up winning the game.
Mentally, that will have really hurt the Australian players. Yeah.
Remember extra time, we're all in the huddle.
Hearing what the boss said during that speech to the players, you just concede in the 90th minute, just 2 minutes before winning the Asian Cup, and then you somehow galvanise the team to go back out.
We're looking over to their camp, and they were all lying on the floor and getting massages and stretching their calves out because they were cramping up. So we kind of knew this was a time, and we had them.
Here's Luongo, Mackay. Option on the right is Juric. Was that a shot? Was it a cross? Still he goes on, scrapping for it with Kim Jin-soo. Did the fullback bring him down first time, maybe even second time? Still we go on. Juric has wriggled his way clear. Chance! Goal! For Australia! James Troisi! Can that win the Asian Cup? Oh boy!
You still get goosebumps, watching what was, I guess, history that we created on that night.
Crazy celebrations. I get goosebumps every time I see it. It's one of those epic moments in Australian sporting history.
I think about it all the time now. There's just in that split moment when he scored that goal, and the pure, adulation on all the players' faces when we celebrated on the side there was just one of the probably the most special. Even though it wasn't my goal, it was one of the most special moments in the national team jersey.
That's it, they've done it! They have done it, Australia! History created with the blast of the referee's whistle. And 55 years after they first dared to dream of being part of the giant continent to the north, Australia, champions of Asia.
Winning silverware, when you sit down with a group of guys and you set out a plan of being successful and how you're going to do it, you go through all the graft and grind to have that success, to achieve it, the feeling that comes over you. That's why I continue to do what I do, in search of that feeling. There's nothing better than it in life.